Now then, hey guys, exciting information. We have a look at the full Amon skill tree. This was uploaded onto Bilibili after the Bilibili World event that was happening this weekend in Shanghai, and the streamer called Super Invincible Master Red was able to upload the whole thing. It is in Mandarin. I've had to translate it, and I want to highlight just the music that was in this video that I had to listen to whilst I was getting the screenshots to translate. It was like this for 10 minutes. This is one of the reasons why I took like a 6-year break, but regardless, we have a lot to get through. It's a long video, but we go over all of the talents and some of the cool synergies that are in there. And yeah, if you weren't thinking about playing Amon before, give this a watch. I think it might change your mind. Let's get started. All right, and we'll start off with the red tree, which is called Disaster, which great start with the translations. And looking at Onslaught, which is one of the abilities we know a good amount about, the translation leaves a lot to be desired. Overload's iron making, gaining continuous post-protection recovery. Essentially, this is your first ability is the Doomfist-esque punch, where you go across. We saw some more gameplay from this late yesterday. And then also your secondary ability is a big hammer slam, which is similar to what Reinhardt had in the PvE game mods that were originally scrapped in Overwatch. So it's nice to see it's still living large in this game. And also, for those that don't know, Amon's unique trait, as each of the Vault Hunters have one, that's a bit more tailored out. And we also don't see the description of, so sorry, Birdman, you're still out of luck on that one, is that every action skill that you have in these trees, you get a secondary action skill to go with it. Also, the quality of these images does improve over time, so bear with me. We start off with Driving Force, where it's a kill skill to increase Amon's shield recovery rate and movement speed for a period of time. 5% per layer for the protection, and then 3% for movement speed, with 3 stacks total, but I imagine that would go up. Burning Heart, another passive, where it increases Yaya's, which is just Amon's burn damage. Might be the names of the axes, actually, but yeah, more burn damage. We then have Chaos, where Amon gains melee critical strike rate for 5%, so 25% total. And also as a reminder, the devs have said that the talent trees for Wrath and Vex are subject to change. No doubt for Amon, it's also the same. So don't focus on it too much. Heavy plate armor increases Amon's maximum capacity and maximum super shield capacity. So this is probably over shield. If you essentially have any traits that break your shield, you'll get an over shield charge potentially. So it makes you a bit tankier. Moving on to tier 2, we have Titanium Alloy Finger Tiger, which I hope they keep that translation in. Increases Amon's melee damage and skill damage. A good old 25%, 15% skill damage. Not too bad. We then move on to the first augment of this tree, Thermal Diffusion, where Rocket Iron, which I guess is the melee punch ability, has 2 modes, increasing both radius and dealing bonus damage based on Amon's max armor. Max armor is interesting. We haven't seen too much of that so far in other trees either. And I imagine it's similar to Crucible that we're going to see soon, that if you left click, you deal burning melee attack damage, and if you right click, you deal freezing melee attack damage instead. Which is cool. It's nice to see one ability take some of the elements, quite literally, from some of the other abilities that Amon has available to them. A punch to the stomach. Combat damage and weapon damage have a chance to inflict weakness on the enemy for a period of time. Weakened enemies deal less damage and take more damage, and weaknesses are affected by status effect duration and are treated as status effects. Okay, so this is interesting. This is almost like Slag to an extent, right? They do 40% less damage, and that's with 1 point in it, and they take 20% more damage. Okay, that's actually kind of ridiculous. I haven't read all of these so far, just the names as I got the screenshots, but yeah, that's actually a 6 skill, but it might just be a little bit too strong. Every build with Amon, you want to grab this, no? We move on to the other augment, Pyroclastic. While on the attack, Amon fully regenerates his health and shields and is surrounded by Forge Storm, dealing burning status effect damage over time to nearby enemies. So I imagine when you use the action skill, you regenerate health and shields, and you have like a fire aura thing going on at the same time. Killing an enemy in the Forge Storm will restore the duration of Yalu's active skill and increase the Forge Storm's, I guess that would be like duration. It does 40 damage per second, it gives you 20% action skill recovery, and it does 20% more damage per kill, going to a maximum of 200%. I wonder if that's only for his like secondary slime ability though, or whether that counts for the punch, or maybe both. Both would be cool. We then have Master of the Storm, increase Amon's status effect damage and duration. Again, can't really go wrong with that. Moving on to tier 3, Steel Forging. After Amon activates the Forging skill, he will be temporarily immune to all damage. A nice way to sort of just keep yourself alive if and when you need it. But again, I don't know whether that's to do with the left click or the right click or both, because the translation for Onslaught is so bad. Bullet Storm. When Amon applies a status effect, his gun damage is increased for a period of time. Again, very strong. 1% per layer. Going up to 5%, what, 25% total? That feels kind of weak in comparison to some of the other ones, but who knows? Could be just subject to change, innit? Impulse. When Amon causes gun damage, his action skill cooldown speed is increased for a period of time. Strongest defense. Amon gains super protection when dealing melee damage. So you get super shield, which is interesting. I don't know if that's over shield again. It must be, but considering there's a bit of focus on armor in this tree, I wonder how that sort of interacts a little bit more. We need a bit more information, I think, to see him in play. We'll move on to the left tree. We start with Bloodthirsty. When Amon's shield is broken, he will gain health for a period of time, increasing his reload speed and lifesteal. Interesting. Another augment, Fallen Frost. Press it immediately after launching a rocket. I guess it's if you press the active ability again after using action skill, you will use a follow-up attack, causing a large area of freezing melee damage in front of Amon. Non-boss enemies with less than 25% total health will be killed immediately. So it's like a combo punch that's also an execute as well, which is kind of cool. If you have a lot of like action skill, end or kill skills to work with, I can imagine you can chain these similar to like Amara's melee tree. Violent. When Amon activates the forging skill, he will enter a frenzy state for a period of time, gaining immunity to receiving damage, I guess, and his gun damage and melee damage will gain added frost damage. Interesting. Here you can tell that the quality goes up quite a lot, so sorry about that. Only Blood Red. Killing skill. When Amon kills an enemy while in a frenzy, the duration of the frenzy will be partially restored, and the bonus frost damage will be increased, going up to 200% total. Frost breaks. Them. When Amon's shield is broken, it will restore part of the shield and detonate, dealing cryo damage and freeze. So it's almost like an overshield again, but it does a lot of damage in place. It's similar to Transform, Revolter and stuff, no? It's like in Borderlands 3 with any shield that does explode in like Nova damage when it breaks. You can build around that a bit more. And if you get like anointments and stuff like with Revolter where you can activate it on an action skill usage, yeah, that could be pretty strong. No doubt there's something like that in the game. Anyway, Full of Energy. Increases Amon's maximum health capacity. The higher his health, the more melee damage he causes. He does 6% more when full, so this would go up to like 30%. And Frostblade. Scorching Smash is now Frostblade. Hold F. So I guess this is the right-click slam. Hold F to swing a massive forged axe, sending a wave of forging that deals icy melee damage and freezes enemies it passes through. Enemies killed by Frostblade will explode, dealing frost damage. So it's almost like Ordnance Frost builds, a little bit of melee thrown in this one. And then finally you have Death Touch in this tree. When Amon causes melee damage, there is a chance to activate a killing skill. Okay, interesting. So I wonder if you get like this Forge Storm Pyroclastic thing and then also go more into Violent and then only Blood Red, that you just have this like AoE frenzy effect that is constantly kept up by melee. Okay, that's something interesting to theorycraft, but we'll keep moving. Middle tree has Into Battle. Amon's damage and damage reduction will increase based on the distance from the enemy. So you do more damage when close, and you take less damage if you're close range too. Similar to stuff that Amara has. Augment here, Force of Nature. When launching an onslaught, dealing gun damage to an enemy will put them into a ready state for a period of time. When they die or are damaged by a forging skill, they will explode, causing burning damage to nearby enemies. So, I mean, this is probably to do a lot with this middle talent as well, right? The one where, like, weakened enemies take... It's basically like a status effect you can put on people that isn't necessarily an element either. So it's kind of like Slag. This kind of ties into it a little bit. So, yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of strong combos you can run here. Burn the Barrier. The higher Amon's shield value is, the higher his firing rate and status effect rate will be. Crippling Blow. Gun critical hits have a chance to inflict weakness on enemies for a period of time. Weakened enemies deal reduced damage and take more damage. Weakened enemies are affected by status effect duration and are considered status effect. So this is a little bit more building into that weakness trait, which I guess is sort of unique to Amon as well as the one where he gets two action abilities. But it's almost similar to like Rush Stacks for Amara, that it's just maybe focused in one tree. Rearm. When Amon uses melee attacks to cause damage, some of the current gun's ammunition will be replenished. Omen. Killing skill increases Amon's melee damage and maximum shield capacity for a period of time. Again, with that talent over on the left-hand side, that if you do a melee hit, it can activate a kill skill. Omen is just perfect pairing. Rushing Lava. So your Scorching Smash, the big hammer, radius is increased and stores damage. After a delay, fire breaks out at the feet for up to 3 enemies. The fire deals additional burning melee damage and also splits across all of the remaining targets. Deadly Flare. When Amon kills a weakened enemy, the enemy will explode, inflicting burn to nearby enemies. And in the right tree, Catastrophe. When Amon applies electric shock to the enemy, its critical hit rate is increased for a period of time. When Amon inflicts burn on an enemy, its critical damage is increased for a period of time. Okay, so you shock them and then burn them, at least using some of the other elements to work with. And then moving on to the augment on this side, when launching a fierce attack, the effect rate of Amon status is increased. Pressing F will fire a concentrated wave of lightning, dealing increased melee damage to enemies it passes through. So essentially we've got Frost on the left-hand side, Fire in the middle, and then shock damage on the right-hand side. Dragon's Breath. When Amon activates his cannon, I guess that's just his punch, the next gun bullet is converted, oh, it could be ordnance actually. His next gun bullet is converted to incendiary damage, staggering enemies damaged and increasing damage dealt. So I guess there's a little bit more ordnance to work with. Explosive Aegis. According to Amon's shield value, his status effect damage and artillery damage are increased. The fuller his shield is, the stronger the effect. So again, like another build up for strong shield, strong HP, make it as high as possible, you're going to do more damage. Rock Fist. When Amon causes melee damage, a certain percentage of the cooldown time of forging skill is restored. Again, with one of the left-hand side, not the capstone, but the one next to it. I feel like that's a good combination to have. Melee damage. Melee attacks will double this effect. Oh yeah, because some abilities and skills will also do melee damage on top of the normal damage it does. Then we got Trial. Amon deals increased melee damage to enemies with less than 50% total health. With stuff like the Execute ability we saw, this works. Final capstone in this tree is Storm Guillotine. Hold F to swing your giant forged sword, sending a wave of forged enemy that deals electric melee damage to all enemies it passes through. Each time you hit an enemy, you will recover the active skill cooldown, active skill duration, and artillery cooldown. So there's like ordnance, big explosive combinations here. No doubt you could just get to a point where you're just smashing the sword down over and over again on the ground and you'll have zero cooldown to work with. I can't wait for that to happen, but that's all of the stuff in the Disaster Red tree. Let's go check out the blue one because that's got a lot of stuff we haven't seen yet. So this is the Neuromechanical tree. It probably has a different name in English. It's just a bad Google Translate. And we have Scourge, which is called Whip in here, but we know it's going to be called Scourge from a Game Informer interview. Amon will equip a Forged Shield to absorb all frontal damage and convert it into Vengeance. When the Vengeance bar is full, the Forged Shield will provide damage reduction. If Vengeance is not obtained within a period of time, it will be consumed quickly. And then you press and hold F, you fire a Forged Wave, dealing frost damage to enemies it passes through, consuming damage from the Vengeful Rage boost. Sorry, I was just reading it myself. 20% when using Forged Rage. So, seems a strong ability, mitigating damage and then sending it back at the opponent. Very similar to, I guess, Athena is probably the closest example. But going into the tree, we have Nature's Wrath, improves Amon's status effect application rate and freezing efficiency. When it activates an active skill, the effect is doubled. I wonder if this includes the weakened debuff that Amon has access to as well, whether this would synergize with it. Considering it counts as a status effect to an extent for him, I'd imagine so. Scorched Earth Kairos. Increase Amon's gun damage and magazine capacity. Nice and simple. Real Excitement. Amon gains health restoration. Each time Amon takes or absorbs non-status damage, he gains a layer of resoluteness for a period of time, increasing this effect. So you gain a buff called resoluteness, and it increases your health restoration every time you take kinetic damage, I guess it would be. 10% for each layer of determination and courage. So resoluteness there. Maximum stacks of 20. So 40% health regeneration is pretty strong. Scar Tissue increases Amon's maximum health capacity and repair kit healing amount. So again, just more healing, more damage mitigation, more of a tanky tree so far. Born to Fight. The higher Amon's health is, the more gun damage he gains. When Amon is at maximum health, this effect is doubled. So this again is like increasing shields, increasing health, doing more damage that way. But less focus on melee thus far. Freeze Beat. When launching the Scourge Whip, Amon will taunt the enemy and send out a freezing pulse every second, causing freezing damage to the enemy and restoring the health of allies. While Amon's movement speed is reduced, and Amon's gun will gain bonus frost damage, and each shot will consume vengeance. Okay, interesting. So what's the duration on that? I don't know if there's a set duration on it. I think it is more just generally keeping up the vengeance uptime, and then if you want to use it, you can explode it out with your holding F key. This could just be a consistent buff if you have the ability to keep the uptime going as long as possible. Comet Tail. When Amon causes artillery damage, which I guess is ordnance again, there is a chance that from the frozen status effect Comet Tail. When Amon causes ordnance damage, I assume is what it's going to be, there is a chance that the frozen status effect will be applied, causing continuous freezing damage for a period of time. Comet Tail is affected by status effects inflict rate. Okay. Crackle and Chill. Forged Wave now consumes more vengeful rage and explodes on impact, dealing area of effect. Freezing cannon damage. If the Forged Wave passes through the firewall, it will further increase the blast radius. So what this means essentially is your secondary fire consumes more of the vengeful damage, and it's sort of increased area of effect, I guess is what it would be. Increase Amon's active skill duration and gun switching speed, so again, more like gun focus here. Hail of Bullets. Amon's bullet has a chance to ricochet as elemental echoes, causing frost damage. Okay, interesting. But specifically like frost damage only, it can't be changed to something else. Mechanic, Killing Skill. Amon restores a certain percentage of the artillery cooldown rate every time he gets a kill. Again, I feel like with that melee combination, just melee ordnance combos, that seems to be really strong. Ancient Way increases the frost damage caused by Amon. Again, more frost focus. Warrior's Cup. If Amon uses a repair kit when launching an active skill, the duration of the active skill can be partially restored. So again, it feels like Scourge is this kind of like uptime thing that you can keep up in various different ways. So if you use a med kit, you're able to restore it for 30% potentially if this is fully capped out. So it feels that Scourge uptime is going to be the main way to sort of play around it, keeping it up as long as possible. And like a Breath of Sindragosa from World of Warcraft, I guess is like the first thing I think of. Wildfire starts a Prairie Fire. Great stuff. Amon's ricochet damage is increased, and the burn damage and the burn duration. So I wonder if this is similar to the one that we saw where it does cryo damage, that you can make it incendiary instead. Forged Waves is now a Fiery Rebuke. Consume all Vengeful Rage and hurl your Forged Shield at the target enemy, dealing ordnance damage that ricochets on impact. Fiery Rebuke ricochets additional times based on Vengeful Rage spent. So if you fully cap it out, it's going to bounce around once for every 20% of Vengeance consumed, so total 5 times. When throwing a Forged Shield, damage absorption is disabled until it returns. So you can be a little bit of a glass cannon here, but that sounds ridiculous. You just throw a shield and you can maybe just one-shot a boss or a pack. Okay, I really like the stuff that I'm seeing from Amon so far. There seems to be a lot of like cool synergies here. Burning with Anger, Killing Skill. Use burning damage to kill the enemy and you will gain a layer of fire adaptability for a period of time. The stacking of the fire adaptability will increase the reload speed and active skill duration rate for a total of 5 times. I feel with this is probably something that is a lot stronger than it looks, but also pay attention to the fact that like it's a full like all the way down tree that we're getting on Amon, which I don't think we've seen so far for Vex or Rafa. We continue on with World Destroyer. When Amon lands and slams, he consumes all fire compatibility strikes to create a fire fissure in front of him, dealing bonus melee damage to all enemies hit. So it feels like something, again, that you want to rack up stacks of, and then you explode it with a lot of damage. Mixing World Destroyer here with this Capstone Fiery Rebuke, you might just two-shot people. Willbreaker Fire bonus damage for each stack of elemental capacity consumed. 20% per layer, doesn't say any stacks, so I guess it's like total stacks of, 5 here, so... Disco Inferno. When Amon applies Incineration to an enemy, its rate of fire will be increased for a period of time. Burn it, baby, burn it. I don't know why that's in there. Fire rate is increased 1.5% for a total of 3 stacks, but I guess that'll go up with the more points you put in it. And Ballistic Barrier. Amon gains a super shield when dealing artillery damage. The capstone is Ring of Frostfire. The firewall is now circular, dealing bonus status effect chance to enemies within it, and causes freezing damage to enemies entering or leaving. Okay. Friendly projectiles that pass through the wall of fire gain further damage and projectile velocity boosts. So this is almost like Baptiste's ultimate, that you can increase the damage by 50%. So that really does like promote playing with like friends and stuff here, but also I imagine it's a case of if you can put it down and then get out of it yourself and then fire like ordnance damage through it, if the boss is there, for example, it would still work for you. And increase projectile speed too. And then finally, Cooling Cloak, where every time you get a kill, you restore some of Willbreaker's cooldowns. It doesn't say how much, but it says that there is a recovery of 6 seconds. Ice Rage, killing skill. Use freezing damage. When you kill an enemy, you will gain a layer of freezing adaptability for a period of time. So this is very similar. It seems to be like this is basically the same tree that goes down, but for different elements. Although this one is free at the end and it doesn't just have the soft capstone of 1. So you gain increased gun damage and the duration is 30 seconds. Maximum number of layers is 5, but again, you can put 5 points into it. Eternal Winter. Forged Waves now partially restores the duration of active skills and firewalls when damaging an enemy, and it can be activated up to 3 times in a row. The third time it is activated, it will fire a giant Forge Wave that deals higher damage and does not consume Vengeance. Okay, so you can keep... This is less of like a big one-shot ability, more just partial smaller hits, but you can keep it up for longer. Then we have Northwind. Amon's gun critical hit has a chance to apply additional slowness to an enemy, the same effect as when causing freezing damage. The same effect, but not cryo damage, is what I'm reading. Ice Age. Amon deals increased damage to frost enemies and bosses. Okay, so it's almost like a resistance thing. And Primal Surge. When Amon applies a stats effect to an enemy, there's a chance to restore some of his shields and ammunition. It's not too bad. Winter Kiss. When Amon causes artillery damage, it will consume the corresponding number of frozen adaptability stacking layers according to the number of nearby enemies. Generating tracking echoes, which I guess is like the element echoes that bounce around and cause ranged frozen damage. So big like splash, frost, ordnance ability stuff. And then impact debris. Elemental echo has a chance to ricochet. So those echoes ricochet more and you could just do more damage with a 30% chance, so 1 in 3. Then the capstone is Glacier Mania. Firewall is now Ice Frenzy. You hold F to swing your Forged Steel Whip, hitting nearby enemies twice and dealing frost damage. Then you slam the ground, creating a frost rift that deals frost damage and leaves behind a source of frost for a while. So a good like AoE ability, especially if everybody's grouped up in the same area. Blackout. Artillery damage has a chance to be a critical hit, which will shock the enemy. The augment is Storm Spear. Forge Wave is now a Storm Lance. You throw to forge a spear, dealing shock damage on impact, consuming damage from the Revengeful Rage boost. Enemies damaged by the Forged Spear are poised for a period of time, which I guess is maybe weakened or stunned, and will detonate when damaged by the Forged skill, dealing shock damage to the target but not to nearby enemies. I mean, 400 damage here, 300 for detonation damage. That's a lot, especially like at this level. Usually you see like abilities with like 100, 200 damage, so this might hit really, really hard, but might require a little bit of aim to get there. Thunder's Fury, killing skill. When you kill an enemy with electric damage, you will gain a layer of electric suitability. Yeah, we've seen this. We've seen what it is for Frost and Fire so far. When Amon causes active skill damage, he consumes 1 layer of electric adaptability and generates a Forged Thunderbolt to attack the enemy, dealing electricity damage. 12.5% of damage dealt. If that goes up to, what would it be, like 60 odd damage potentially? That's kind of crazy. Smelting Furnace. Amon recovers a certain percentage of cooldown time for his forging skills whenever he gets a kill. Strategist. Amon's hip fire will increase his rate of fire but reduces his gun control when aiming, increases Amon's gun damage and gun handling. So if you have a weapon that you want to spam, you just hip fire it. If you have something that's a little bit more accurate, you can like hold right click, aim down it, and you do a lot more damage. So that builds both ways, which is kind of cool. And the capstone is Anger Descends from Heaven. Firewall is now Wrath of Heaven. Press F to summon a giant forged sword and attack the target enemy, causing shock damage to enemies within range. So you have like a lightning spear and then a lightning sword that you slam down almost like you'll fall from the Avengers kind of thing. And ultra high voltage. Elemental Thunderbolt now staggers enemies and consumes an additional stack of shock adaptability to multiply the damage done. Boss enemies cannot be staggered, and villain enemies have a reduced chance of staggering, which I guess is probably bosses. I'll be honest, like trying to read these translated talents is like melting my brain, so I'm not really thinking about like the building of these talents as such, like the theory crafting. I'll leave it for when we get actual translations of the abilities. But I do kind of like the stuff that I'm seeing for Amon in this tree. Like you do have more of like a shield playing up for the uptime, but building it into different weapons and different elements, like that's a cool fantasy element, if all else. So yeah, this is really exciting stuff. We're going to finish over on the Crucible tree now that we've gone over Revenge, actually, which has changed the name. All right, one last tree to go. This is the Neuromechanical one, so sorry about getting it wrong beforehand. Now finally, the green tree. This is the neuromechanical one. Again, we don't really know what the name is so far, and the ability is called Harsh Furnace, but we know it's called Crucible. Amon will be equipped with a forged axe that can be thrown and picked up from the ground to return some of the cooldown. If you hold left click, you throw a flaming axe. If you hold right click, you will throw a freezing axe, dealing freezing melee damage, burning melee damage, as you've sort of seen already. Enemies damaged by the forged axe will be put into a ready state for a period of time. So this is like the weakened state ability. So there's more buffs, I suppose, that are going to be in this tree. We start off with Cast Iron. Improves Amon's forging skill cooldown rate and gun control. So this is just a cool ability if you want to... I guess I'd wonder what the handling is like for the axes themselves too, whether they could be increased or decreased. But, you know, standard stuff. Before the Storm, Killing Skill. Increase the elemental damage caused by Amon for a period of time. This seems to be just a really good skill to pick for any tree that you're going for, considering how much of a focus it is around elemental damage, and also increasing like weakened stacks as well. So that seems to be almost useful everywhere. Increase Amon's critical damage. After dealing melee damage, the effect is doubled for a period of time. And we have Speed Up, increases Amon's reload speed, and the effect is doubled for a period after detonation. Is this detonation of weakened? It might be, or just any status effect. Hard to know, but that's cool. So you can just keep applying that debuff with your guns, and you're going to be able to fire them more. Cerebral Embolism Operation. Okay. While Amon is reloading, his gun gains bonus electric damage for a period of time. Pretty neat. Endless War is an augment here. Each layer of ready to fire increases the firearm damage taken by the ready enemy. If Amon detonates an enemy in preparation, a new forged axe will be created, which will automatically seek out nearby enemies. So that's like a drone. We have seen some gameplay of axes flying around doing damage almost as pets, as summons. So I imagine this is a case of like, if you weakened an enemy, you put a debuff on them, and then you kill them, they explode, you'll have a forged axe flying around, applying weaken to other people as well. So it might just be a build where you can have loads of axes up, applying this debuff that then explodes the enemies, that gives you more axes, and you're just running around just with an artillery of weapons. And how many stacks total? It doesn't say, but there's like different layers. Okay, this is like looking cool, but a little bit strong. Tempering Fire, we have seen gameplay of this. It's a forging drone skill. When Amon activates a forging skill, so if you throw an axe, it will spawn a tomahawk forging drone that will attack nearby enemies for a period of time, causing burning melee damage. If the Tempering Fire is already active, activating the forge skill with fully restore the duration, so you're not going to get more drones from doing this, you're just going to have one that's going to have a pretty good uptime. It's worth being clear as well that this is the secondary fire where you make a multi-elemental axe and you throw it, so it's not just off of you holding left click or right click. But it's still pretty strong. Axe and Stone. After Amon damages an enemy with his forged axe, his movement speed will increase for a period of time and can use melee attacks to detonate the enemy in preparation. Detonating the Flame Axe will restore the active skill cooldown, and detonating the Frozen Axe will restore the cannon's cooldown for ordnance. Okay, so again, like reducing cooldowns for ordnance and action skills, and really leaning into this like weakened state effect. Increase Amon's forging skill damage and detonation damage. So it feels like Splash Ordnance is going to work with this as well, because the debuffed enemies explode when they die. So yeah, I like where we're going with this, but there's too much to choose from choice-wise. When Amon activates the forging skill, his gun damage will be increased for a period of time. Okay. And then Twin Ranges. Temporary Pie will now spawn an additional axe-smithing drone that now deals frost melee damage. So that's why we saw two flying around and the uptime being kept up as you get the kills with the weakened debuff. Killing Skill. Amon gains gun crit hit chance for a period of time. We've seen this one already. And then Harrod's Call increases Amon's electric damage. Going over to the right tree, we have Raging Fire. Active skill damage has a chance to critically hit or burn the enemy. Your Frost Axe now applies freeze on impact. We saw gameplay of this as well, which is really strong. I wonder if it's like the drone as well, when it hits, would apply freeze on impact. I don't think so though. Permafrost. When Amon freezes an enemy, a freezing hazard source will be generated under the enemy's feet, causing freezing damage for a period of time. So you basically go right-click an enemy that's in the middle of a pack. Everybody's going to take ice damage, and we've seen how many synergies there are for cryo damage so far. Wild Heart increases Amon's status effect damage and hazard source damage, which I guess is like this sort of hazard source, just areas of effect, maybe like even splash damage as well. Freezing Burn. When using firearms to cause burning damage, the freezing damage is increased for a period of time. When using firearms to cause freezing damage, the burning damage. Okay, so that's cool. So you could do burning and freezing damage at the same time. I wonder if that's like freezer burn. That's what the translation's meant to be. And then reactive armor. Detonate and restore some of Amon's shields and cannon cooldown. Flaming boomerang. The double blade now deals burning melee damage from 2 directions with a larger radius and leaves a trail of fire while flying close to the ground, dealing burning damage over time. So you could just boomerang your axe to do AoE in a certain area that does melee burning damage. Causing an explosion or damaging an enemy with a fire boomerang will restore the cooldown of the blacksmithing skill, which I guess is probably just a normal left clicks. So this is just your secondary fire ability. But it does fire damage, which with all of these talents will end up doing cryo damage too, freezing on impact, doing AoE damage in certain areas. So this is very much like an AoE skill tree. When Amon causes forging damage, he will generate drone singularities for a period of time. We should give it a name. What, like the axes or something else entirely? Okay, yeah, we need gameplay of that one for sure. Middle tree, Tempered Lightning. Forging drone skill. When Amon activates the active skill, it will spawn a sword forging drone, which will attack nearby enemies for a period of time, causing electric shock melee damage. If Tempered Lightning is active, activating the active skill will restore a portion of duration. So kind of like the fire and the frost axe that we saw here when you activate the active skill, which I guess is the secondary again. Could be just a normal fire too. You will have a lightning axe flying around with you too. That's kind of cool. So you've got 3 axes flying around with you doing damage. Blade Storm is the augment. When Amon will now be equipped with a forged sword with a choice of fire or electricity effects. When enabled, all charges will be consumed to fire the forged sword barrage, because there's different charges for the left click and the right click. Enemies damaged by the forged sword will be put into a ready state for a period of time, so they're weakened, they have this effect on them. To fire a burning barrage, you would hold left click. If you fire with right click, you would do it with electric melee damage. I wonder if it is melee damage or just a bad translation. But I guess it stops you from doing frost damage instead as the right click. Instead, you do shock damage, which, again, cool that you have that option. When Amon and his forged drones critically strike an enemy or create a detonation, his damage is increased for a period of time. Detonation grants multiple stacks of 30. That's a pretty good amount of damage done when you've just got drones doing the work for you. Contempt Armor. Amon gains a super strong shield when dealing active skill damage. So again, I guess that's overshield. Lightning Rod. Amon's gun bullets have a chance to generate electric thunderbolts when they critically hit, causing electric shock damage. They do 30% of damage dealt and a 25% chance to... does that... Okay, yeah, we're moving on from that one because that one is breaking my brain. Gradually rise. Increase the active speed and movement speed of the forged drones. Okay, so they're just going to be zipping around like crazy. And then sharpen the tip. Forging drones have a chance to critically strike. When the forged drones critically strike, part of Amon's active skill cooldown will be restored. And then Storm Surges. Your double edge, so I guess that's a secondary fire, is now Storm Surge. Hold F to throw a pair of twin forged blades that deal area of effect melee damage on impact. Storm Surge creates a forging storm for a period of time upon dealing impact electricity status effect damage. So I guess you throw that at an enemy and it's going to do a big AoE shock damage, which again feels strong but doesn't seem as cool as the boomerang. Left tree, finally we're almost there. Noise. Increase the damage and detonation radius of Amon's artillery. And you have Hammering Moment. Amon will now be equipped with a forged hammer with a choice of frost or shock effects. I see. So you can build around fire or frost, fire or electricity, or frost and electricity. I've noticed that we haven't seen corrosive status effects either. It just seems to be these 3, but these are kind of the main 3. For shields, for armor, for normal health. Whatever you're facing, you get some good stuff to work with. But that's cool. So basically the augments for all of these trees are to change the elements of your weapons, changing them from axes to swords to hammers. So again, class fantasy is pretty cool on that one. Temperate Ice, Forged Drone Skill. When Amon activates his artillery, okay, so when you ordnance, you will spawn a hammer forged drone that deals damage to nearby enemies for a period of time, dealing freezing melee damage. So if you have the other ones, you could have 4 drones flying around, potentially critting people. Increase the damage and duration of the forged drones. Again, I don't know if that's just specifically for the this drone or whether it's the other 4 that we've covered so far. Endless Bombing. I cannot read that text of the bomb. When using a grenade, there's a chance that it will be returned automatically or refunded maybe. Heavy weapons have a chance to return 1 ammunition when they deal damage an enemy. So your grenades can return 30% chance total, 30% heavy weapons damage. that gives you 1 ammunition. So basically, you can refund grenades or ordnances depending on what you're running. When dealing an artillery damage, its rate of fire is increased for a period of time. So your ordnances can just spam out shots with 12 stacks going up to 24% fire rate. Okay, yeah, that's strong. Ordnance seems to be a really good way to build, but it's in various different directions. And Snow Hammered. Hold F to throw your twin forged hammers, dealing freezing melee damage to nearby enemies on impact, and ricocheting up to 3 times between nearby enemies. If no ricochet target is found, the hammers deal additional damage before self-destructing. So if you're on a boss, it's just going to do a lot more damage onto that specific player. If there's more people around, it's going to bounce off of them. And 350 damage, again, is quite a lot. Hammer of Destiny, to really finish us off with all of these Amon badly translated skills. Forge drones now deal artillery damage in addition to their original damage types and have a chance to trigger an explosion when damaging an enemy, causing ranged freezing damage. Again, with the weakened debuff stuff, this seems crazy strong. Okay, yeah, I think we definitely need like more endgame stuff for Amon. I wasn't really that interested in playing him as much as some of the other characters, but I have to definitely rethink this now because some of the stuff that Amon has available to him is very, very cool and notably very, very strong. But yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. This video ended up being quite long, but naturally that's expected when we're going through all of these talents. But let me know what you think. If you can theorycraft some stuff that we've gone over, that would be cool because my brain is mush right now. I'll have a look at it again later. But thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more Borderlands 4 stuff, and I'll see you next time.